Welcome. Drink with James, episode 20. "20 weeks is longer, Tim was just telling me, is longer than any relationship he's ever had in his entire life. So this is the longest term, most committed relationship Tim has ever been in. I feel honored to be a part of it. I think you guys do as well, so thanks for following along. Tim and I are bringing just straight fire the next few months in Drink with James. We're lining up a lot of guests. Y'all seem to like the episodes like we did with Lainey and JC. We bring more people in, so we're gonna have different guests. We're gonna go to different places. We might even climb fucking Mount Everest. We will see, but we are going to elevate this thing. If you have people that you think, types of people that you'd like to hear from, or specific people that you think should be on the show, drop that in the comments as well. What we always need is questions, right? So please send in questions. You can email them, you can tweet them, you can just comment on YouTube or on Facebook, and we will absolutely get to them. But please ask questions. I was supposed to film this thing yesterday, but we had a For You event, which turned into a new wave dance party, which turned into eating tater tots at 1 a.m. So I was too hungover yesterday to film and Drink with James. And I'm flying down to my cousin's wedding in South Carolina today. So it's 11:50 in the morning and I'm on my second whiskey for you guys. And I'm not like super happy about that, but I do it for you. We gotta get the show done. I gotta fly to a wedding. So this is the life that we're living together. Yeah, okay, so I think we've talked about long-term contracts before, and I think they're awesome, and I think if you can get them, you should go out and get them. A couple things about them. So first of all, how do you get to the point where you can talk to a brand about securing a 6-month or a year-long contract? First of all, they have to be coming to you regularly for sponsored posts. If a brand is coming to you regularly for sponsored posts, I think you should concentrate on trying to get bonus content out there for them, and not dedicated posts necessarily, but sprinkle it into a post here or there. Wear one of the pieces in one of your other outfit posts and tag them, whatever it might be, but just keep giving them a little more so that they want to continue working with you, which is good business regardless. Once you've done that and they feel like they want to work with you, I think then you can bring up the year-long contract thing. And there's a few different ways to negotiate it to make it sound good. First of all, a brand is only going to buy the year for a couple of reasons. Well, for one reason, which is saving money, right? So they have to like you enough and like working with you enough to know that they're gonna wanna work with you every month regardless. So then by buying a year or 6 months up front, they're gonna get some economies of scale and they're gonna be able to get it a little bit cheaper. So you have to make sure you give them a discount. I suggest 20 to 25% on the year probably as a baseline for where you're going. The other thing that you can do to keep the price kind of high, if they kind of come and try and cut you 50%, which I've seen brands try and do, right? And say, okay, yeah, we'll buy the year, but we're going to pay you half of what we usually do because we're guaranteeing you all of this money. The way you can come back with that is take a look at your growth rates on ForeCard. And if you're growing 5% a month, throw that into Excel and compound it over the next 12 months and see where you're going to be at in a year and figure out what your price for a sponsored post will be in a year. So that brand is actually saving a lot of money because they're buying at a price now and they're getting stuff for the year. So it's like buying futures in the commodities market, which I used to actually be a commodities broker. I don't know if you knew that, but I worked on Wall Street as a commodities broker. That's a total aside and it's another story and it was a terrible job, but we're gonna move on. So they're buying stuff now that they know is going to be more expensive in the future. So they're getting it for cheaper. So make sure you do that equation and you do that calculation for them so that they know, yeah, sure, I'm $1,000 for a sponsored post in a round of social now, but if you look at my growth rates, I'm going to be $2,500 in 12 months. So by charging even $1,000 a month, then you could say they're saving a lot of money. So that's something to consider as well. That's it. The thing is, you have to be conscious that if a brand is making an investment like that, if you're a smaller influencer, maybe it's $5,000 or $10,000 for the year. If you're a larger influencer, I've seen $100,000, $200,000, $500,000 for the year. $100,000, $200,000, $500,000 for the year. It's a massive investment. So the thing you do have to consider is that when you're tied that closely to a brand, it's going to be harder to talk about other brands, because in the brand's mind, they're going to say, hey, we made this huge commitment to you, and I know you have to make your money and you've got a business to run, but they're not going to be quite as happy you talking about their competitors than when they just buy a sponsored post here and a sponsored post there. So expect a bit of exclusivity baked into it. So, that can be a little bit difficult. I don't find it as difficult with clothing brands. Like if you worked with, the Gap or J. Crew or Tory Burch, whoever it might be, they're less concerned with you posting about competitors. But when you get into the more niche stuff, liquor or wine or travel, if you're posting, if you have a year-long contract with Clicquot and then you go on a Dom Perignon trip, they're going to be like, oh, seriously? We're your champagne sponsor. So as you get into those more niche markets, if you are doing year or 6-month-long contracts, I think that there's going to be a understanding of exclusivity built in. But make sure the brands pay for that. Exclusivity isn't free, and it shouldn't be cheap. So if they want that, they should pony up. And maybe in your negotiations, make sure that you say, hey, I'm super excited about this. You didn't pay for exclusivity, so I may be posting about some of your competitors throughout the year, and make sure they know that up front. Brands that are slow to adopt to platforms, this happens a little bit less now, but it is still fairly prevalent. I don't think it's a bad thing. Brands are coming to you to help tell their story on a specific platform to a specific group of people, right? So a lot of times what that means is you could have a much larger following than that brand, right? That's the reason they're working with you. If they had a huge social following, they wouldn't need you as much. So I think it's pretty common. That's a big amount of value that you can bring to them, is that you do have a social following and you do believe in these platforms and you do understand these platforms. So don't shy away from that fact. The second part of that is if they don't think social is important, you shouldn't be in a position where you are fighting to say you have value. What you do has value, that is a fact. And if a brand comes back at you or a person comes back at you and says that what you do isn't valuable, that conversation isn't really even worth having. And I used to have a lot of haters online in the Tumblr days, and a lot of people would say very nasty things. And it used to be really fun to eviscerate them and write these posts that would just embarrass them. But it actually makes you look worse, I think, in a lot of ways. I think that if you just keep your head down and keep trucking, that's the best thing to do. I think we had we saw this week that there was a lot of shade being thrown at bloggers. In general, I don't even think it's worth paying attention to, honestly. You guys know that we believe what you do has value. The rest of the world may not agree yet, but they will. And if they don't, it doesn't really matter, because the people who know where the industry is going and where the world is going understands that this is a big part of the future. I think it's natural that they're upset. I don't think it's valid, but I think it's natural, because you're changing things very quickly. You look at any other industry, music. Look at taxi cabs. Do you think the New York City Taxi Cab Commission likes Uber? No, they hate them, because they're taking their jobs away. They're taking money out of their pockets, and that's what you guys are doing. So you have to understand that's where the hate is coming from. It's not coming from a place of they think you're pathetic or they think what you do is not valid. It's jealousy and it's anger that the industry is changing. My point is understanding that and understanding what your detractors, where that vitriol is coming from, should allow you to just walk away from it and not respond, which I think is the best course of action. So we do these things called For University, and we try and teach different things. So we did one on photography, which you all know I used to be a photographer, about some of the things that we talked about. So first of all, photography is super confusing when you start and intimidating. And I kind of started out just with 70 photos of mine, from my very first photos I took with the DSLR to some of my favorite photos that I've taken over the years. And I wasn't trying to flex or brag that much. What I was trying to do is show that, like, yes, there is an ingrained talent for some photographers, and there are some photographers who are artists and they just see things in a very different way. That was never me. I looked at it more as a skill, as a muscle that you could kind of work out and improve and get stronger and stronger and stronger. So I think Tim maybe will throw a couple photos up here. One of my very early photos and one of my favorite photos that I took, and they're, you know, probably 3 or 4 years apart. Which goes to say that, like, if you just work at it and try and learn the basics and build on that and keep improving, like, photography is a thing that you can very much get good at quite quickly. A big part of that, like the very basics, is aperture, and we talked about the importance of aperture. It's probably the one that has the most effect on the way your final images are going to look. One big takeaway from the talk that we had was, if you're shooting outfit posts, even if you're not shooting, you're shooting with a photographer, you know, you should be having them shoot between 2.8 and 3.2 to make sure that you get kind of that blurred background that you're looking for, but also the sharpness that you need to be able to see the clothes and see the detail. Another note that is, if you are shooting there, your shutter speed shouldn't be under 1/200. I think a lot of people, you know, they get down to 2.8 or 3.2 or something. It's a little dark out, and the shutter speed's at 1/60th of a second, and all their photos come out blurry. Maybe they're trying to walk across the street and they can't get that photo that they want. So those two things are kind of important: 2.8 to 3.2 and above 1/200th of a second, to make sure that you get crisp, sharp photos. Another thing we talked about is the importance of RAW versus JPEG. You know, JPEGs are basically like a photocopy of a photo, right? A JPEG takes the image you're seeing in the camera, makes assumptions about it, and locks it in so that you can't really change it much. A RAW photo takes everything. It looks through the camera and it takes every piece of information it can so that you can tweak it. So if you are shooting yourself, for your blog especially, or you have somebody shooting you, make sure they're shooting in RAW, so you're getting the highest quality photos you can. And last but not least is, we talked about kind of the tools for the trade and to understand what you're shooting for. You know, if you go to my Instagram, which, if you guys aren't following it, I talk about it every week and you're still not following, but Tim will throw it up again. But if you look at my Instagram, most of it's shot on a little Ricoh GR, which is like a little $600 or $700 camera that I love. I have a 5D Mark III that I shoot on, and I put photos on my actual blog, which Tim will throw a link up to. But it's kind of big and heavy, and it doesn't fit in my briefcase, so I don't really carry it around on the day-to-day. I use my Ricoh. So, you know, understanding that, you know, iPhone photos or point-and-shoot photos are great for, you know, your Instagram, but maybe you use the professional camera when you're shooting for your blog, and just understanding the tools of the trade. So if you want to see the whole for you, I think it's on Facebook. You can watch the whole thing. It's an hour, but people seem to think it was, you know, quite informative, and hopefully you will too. If you're interested in more photography stuff, that's over here somewhere. So we try and do 4 U's about once a month. So if you're a New York City-based influencer, look out for the invites. Email us, tell us you want to be involved in the next one. Also, we'd love to know what you guys want to hear about these things. We've done one on legal, FTC and things like that. We did the photography one, we did one on coding, and we did one on negotiating deals with brands. So any topics that you don't understand or want to understand better, send them our way and we will try and help figure that out. If you're not in New York City, look out for the Facebook Live feeds. We stream those live so that you guys can be involved. Just pour yourself a drink, put on some music, it'll be like you're there. So that's it. Thank you guys.